Cool, man. So, I'm gonna plan on doing these probably a couple times a month. Um, this is the first of these, so if it's a little rough, then please bear with me.
We should
Um,
we should assume it will be rough as it is the first.
I do have a set of 10 questions that we'll go over. Typically speaking, when I do these with other people, they start with like my story and like what got me into what I do, and blah blah blah. Then they discuss like what it was like before, and then they paint a picture of what's after. Um, and then they kind of get into like specifics. Is there anything in particular that like you want to talk about that showcases Tucson and what you guys are doing? Is there any particular touch points that you have that you'd like me to kind of guide you through as we continue the conversation?
I think it's funny. I was talking to a guy yesterday. You actually may get a call from him. He's up in Boston.
Okay.
He's starting his own little business, doing the same thing. But to me, th this is not a small decision. We kind of come at it a little bit, maybe a little presumptively in the owners, as if it is a small decision, but it's big, right? I mean, you're disrupting your entire home, your property, potentially some aspect of your family, but more than likely for a needed cause. And it can be, there's an emotional decision aspect to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very emotional decision. Very, very
So
emotional.
to me, the most important thing I can do is take away any of that concern, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? Not even just when they decide they want to move forward and, do this, but through that full 6 month process until it's done and you hand them the keys, there are going to be multiple times things are going to come up, right? We had a lady yesterday. We were when push came to shove, and they actually started getting ready to put the doors in place. We're like, you know what? She has two doors for her bathroom, one from her bedroom, one from the kitchen. The one from the kitchen is going to have to only be 28 inches wide, which is not that wide, especially for an older person who at some point may need a walker or whatever down the road.
I'm I'm a buck six, 250, and I'm 32.
Yeah. So we had to walk her through the fact that that door is either going to be 28 inches or she's going to have to lose the door.
Hmm.
And she didn't, this is an older lady, right? She kind of had in her mind what she wanted to do, but the reality was that door was either you were going to walk through that door at 32 inches and either hit a refrigerator going one way or a washer and dryer going the other way. Just didn't make sense. Now, she took a plan and she made changes to it, which is why it came out the way it did. But when we're and so just getting that person through that process, right? And honestly, I didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, my general contractor went over there and explained it to her, showed it to her. It wasn't a phone conversation. It wasn't an email. Went over there and explained to this lady, here's exactly what's going to happen. Here's how far it's going to stick out if you leave this there. And when push came to shove, she said, you know what? You're right. Let's just ace the door. I don't really, it doesn't, I'd rather have that space back in the kitchen anyway, or whatever. Right. And those moments where you're helping someone, I mean, like really helping them. I don't mean helping them by building them a house. I mean helping them through that process.
Making
Help
those
them through the
decisions and
process.
making sure that they understand what the why behind the recommendations of the decisions that you're asking them to make. Is that correct?
Yeah. And when they sign that contract with you, what they want is that. They want to feel good in this moment and they want to feel good for the next 6 months while this thing goes through because it's gonna be a thing, right? It's gonna be a disruption. There's gonna be some scary moments. There's gonna be something you're gonna see and you're gonna go, oh my gosh, it's gonna be that. Or now when you get done, you got to walk them through that. No, it only looks like this right now because this is all we can do at this point. I've had people say, hey, you forgot to do this, you guys forgot to do that. Now between you and me, I don't have any idea what she's talking about, but I tell my general contractor, and he's like, no, that's how it has to be right now. We don't do that until after such and such, you know. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I explain that to her and they feel good about it. But that's what they really want and need, is not just to feel good in the moment that they make the decision, but to feel good in the next 6 months while you're making this major change for them.
There's a lot of parallels to between the process that you just described and launching somebody's marketing campaigns, to be fully honest with you. It's with you guys and the tiny homes that services, or the tiny home companies that we help service. One thing that I've discovered since we started going outside of the anchored tiny home family was how important the decision it is, like, to make right before they make that decision, because it's your baby, it's your business. You want to be able to know that the things that you've made the decisions on were right, and you need to constantly, like, as the service provider, you need to constantly reset those expectations as things come up and all that stuff. So what would you say is like one thing that has helped you build trust so easily and so early? Because we've only been together for a year, right? So what's one thing that you would recommend to other tiny home agency or other tiny home companies and builders to allow them to build that trust that you do on an everyday basis?
Yeah, I think part of it is probably, purposefully not having an agenda when you meet with a client, right?
Hmm.
That you're just there to listen. I mean, and it seems like an obvious point. Anybody in sales who's really in sales knows that you're supposed to listen. I know that there's this concept out there that salespeople are just talking, 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 but good salespeople, right? Good people are listening and they're trying to solve a problem, and understanding and hearing what the problem is the biggest part. Not cutting people off, not trying to get your thought across first and all that kind of stuff. But it really is about listening to the client and understanding what it is that they're doing and dealing with, and making them feel like there are so many people in your exact same position. Everyone, it's the feel felt found to a to a degree, right? I know
It's
exactly how
shocking to
you
me how many
feel.
salespeople don't know that, actually. I've had to teach them that
Yeah,
the majority of the clients feel felt found.
it's an important piece though, right? You need to
Yeah.
they need to be heard. They need to be feel like they're understood. Um, a lot of I think another thing that I do is I give them ballpark pricing the moment I sit there. I sit down with them. I'm not
Okay.
hiding anything. I'm not. I'll even tell it over the phone before I meet with them. I want to make sure that they understand, kind of what the situation is. But immediately turning around and responding to customers' requests and needs. If I get an email or a phone message, I mean, I'm literally turning that around as quickly as I can be in front of my computer. And if I'm already in front of my computer, within minutes, right, I can pull up information on their property, and give them some of the rules and guidelines around what they can do, show them some imagery of pictures, actual floor plans on their lot. I mean, I can do all of that in minutes. And so I do. And then someone feels like, wow, this person's attentive, this person's responsive, and you set the tone for what they're going to experience over the next 6 months. Right. And I think that's a big piece of it. The other thing is, these kinds of relationships are reciprocal. So if you're going to ask for something from them, and by that I mean just information, you also have to be able to be willing to give up information, right? So I I talk about myself and my family and my son and daughter and wife, and our move to Oro Valley and all of that.
Oh,
If
weird. Be a
the
person?
opportunity, yeah. See, I'm actually a guy that lives here in the same area you do. Um, so all of those things kind of go into that, and hey, there is something to be said about your demeanor and your tone, your voice, and just trying to be comforting and soothing. And I know this seems like a big deal to you, but I promise you it isn't. And I'm going to show you how easy this can be. And I also think, I've talked to a lot of home builders that are doing the similar stuff in the ADU space, and I do feel like a lot of them are saying, "Hey, I need to make this kind of money for this project to be worth it," right? And
Okay.
and I
What does
don't
that
I
mean?
don't
What
feel
does that
that
mean
way.
exactly? Like
Well,
that's what the homeowners are telling you, or that's what the
no, I
feeling you're
think
getting from the other
that's what the
builders.
build yeah, that's what the builders are saying. Like, hey,
Okay.
what I mean, I get people ask me because our numbers have been pretty good for the first year, and they'll say, "Well, what kind of margins are you bringing in?" And my response is, I'm not concerned about the margins right now, right? I don't have to make a lot of money right now. The company doesn't. I have low overhead. I have one employee, and literally he just became a full time employee 3 weeks ago, right? So I have the
Yeah.
ability to be able to build homes cost effectively, and we have great pricing, right? I mean, our
I
clients
think
tell
that's
us all
something
the
that
time.
I think that's something that a lot of tiny home people can learn from, right? Is that we have to recognize that right now, especially, well, with the exception of California, because when you go and you talk to a California tiny home builder, they're like, no, this is like competitive landscape 101. But everywhere else, and keep in mind, we've got 17 locations now, and I've explored at least 30 of them at this point, 30 states, counties, municipalities, and all that. And in most places, we have to remember that we're creating the market. And along with creating the market comes a certain amount of education and comes a certain like what you were talking about with getting in front of things. I just look at it from a system standpoint, and it's building that know, like, and trust factor.
Right.
So margins are definitely something that's important because you got to stay in front of it, stay in front of your debt and all that stuff. But while you're creating the market, you need to be okay with taking more time and building more trust and doing the little things. Like, how many reps do you think that it took you, like, of actual site visits and people like getting in front of people to feel comfortable giving the information in the format that you're giving currently?
Well, I mean, that some part of that is a lot of 30 years of experience in sales, right? So it's the message is a little bit different, but the concept and the prep and the delivery is the same, right? And the other thing is I started researching this in February and didn't go on my first call until late June, right? So you've got 5 months or so where you're really digging into it, meeting with the city, meeting with the county, speaking to a bunch of different general contractors, and doing a ton of reading and leveraging the heck out of Chat GPT and just learning a whole lot so that your confidence and then you could talk to it took me about 5 minutes talking to a handful of realtors for me to realize I know more about this than 95% of the people in this city, and I haven't made one call yet. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean my delivery is good yet, right? But I understand what the issues are. I understand what the rules are, the changes in legislation. I had done all that before I ever went on one call, and it is shocking. I went to a City of Tucson meeting last Wednesday night, open to the public at City Hall, specifically talking about the middle housing project that was going to go into effect January 1. There were four people in the audience. And
Are you
my
kidding me?
no, and my pre-construction manager and I were two of those four. The the which just speaks to the lack of knowledge that the city or the county, the population really has around some of these issues. Um, so you can immediately become a subject matter expert as compared to your surroundings if you just spend a little time doing some basic research and speaking to a few people.
Because you tell what
And
they're
again,
lacking,
yeah,
right?
that's a big portion. I think a big part of why people do feel comfortable um, and confident that I know what I'm talking about because, well, I do know what I'm talking about. I've done the research, and I'm
Yeah,
typically sharing something with them they didn't already know.
that's amazing. Um, you actually bring up a couple good points by saying all that. And the first one that I think about is like, because I see the same thing when it comes to like putting together marketing information for this particular space, is there's a lot of people that have generally dabbled in it, and there's a lot of people that have put out some kind of information here or there, or a random blog post from 2022 or 2024. But very little of it is about like what is going to happen in the future and what's upcoming in this particular space. So I guess the first message that the audience should take away from this is that opportunity is almost infinite in this space. And I would say, because I've seen this curve happen before. You and I, Brad, have talked about this a little bit. But before I got into this space, I used to do solar stuff, right? And it's almost like watching a movie that I've already seen the ending to, where it solves a major problem for the residential market. Back then it was the cost of energy. Now it's just affordable the cost of the housing itself. Secondly, is that social media got picked up on it. It's trendy, it's cool. Like people want to know about it, people want to know how it can benefit them, but they don't know about how it can benefit them specifically, which is what creates the vacuum in my mind. But then thirdly, and this is what's coming around the bend, I would say over the next 2 or 3 years, you've already seen some legislation in Tucson. It's coming to other states as well, where now governments and local municipalities are getting a hold of this and they're like, oh, wait, there's opportunity for everybody to benefit from this. And so they're subsidizing programs around it. So where do you see the tiny home industry going over the next 5 years?
Well, I do agree that it will vary on based on the market, right? I mean, I don't we have a legitimate homelessness problem in Tucson and a general affordable housing problem in Tucson.
You were
Um,
telling me something like 33,000. Go into that a little bit for the audience.
yeah, there's you got to the Tucson has made it very, very clear that the expectation is they've got to build 35,000 homes in the next 5 years. I mean, that's just and I don't even know whether you would build 35,000 homes, right? Everyone wants to try to avoid urban sprawl. So, but there's just not a lot of properties left in, kind of central Tucson for which to do that. And so, leveraging existing properties and building additional units on those properties is an absolute necessary
Must.
option, which is what the rules are allowing us to do. January 1, that middle housing issue I was talking about just a moment ago, January 1, you're going to be able to build up to 4 houses on a property. Now, a normal property probably can't handle 3 more houses, but I'll tell you what what can happen is that you can go in there as a developer, knock that house down and build 4 1,000 square foot homes and rent them all. And that to me is going to be the next evolution of this. I think that as cities and counties, municipalities start to see the power of accessory dwelling units, this middle housing concept, and that is not a Tucson concept, that is a national
Oh
concept,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm working
Is
on putting together a deal with somebody in Oregon that this is a well-established principle up in Oregon and Washington State.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so what you're going to see is, I think you're going to see more and more older, houses are just going to get torn down and they're going to put 3 and 4 houses in that space. And I mean, I'm not a NIMBY, so I'm an advocate for that, right? Because that one kind of tear down house that's bringing down the value of the neighborhood anyway. I just
Around it,
assume that
yeah.
you take that out and you put in 4 brand new homes with some nice landscaping and make it attractive. I think it's the opposite of what a lot of the those who were opposed to this concept believe. Now that I saw at one of these meetings, some lady was up there talking about the fact that the city allowed for these large apartment complexes to be built and it blocked her view. Well, I don't know what to tell you, but I mean, we aren't going to not build houses and provide places for people to live so that your view is not blocked. That
It's
can't
not gonna
be the
happen.
number one goal here, right?
Hmm.
It needs to be about trying to find legitimate housing for those that need it. And so, in my mind, there's housing which is, hey, I have a place to live, and then there's housing which is where I have a place to own, right? And so
Yeah.
just providing a ton of rental properties, although it solves part of the problem, it doesn't really get us where every American wants to be, which is to own their own space and not be paying rent for the rest of their lives, but to actually build equity in a property, et cetera. And so this middle housing situation that they're rolling out in the first evolution will probably be rental properties. But in evolutions 2 and 3, they're going to allow those properties to be rezoned and split. So each of those people own that little portion, that 1/4 of that property. It's theirs. That house is theirs. They can build equity into it, and that's ultimately where we need to be. I think the days of the grand 7,000 square foot home for a family of four, um, that's not as attractive and necessary as more of this minimalistic living that we hear about all the time, and tiny homes, ADUs, they feed right into that.
Yeah, it's definitely a more attractive option, especially for our kids' generation. Not necessarily my kid, because my kid's Gen Alpha, but the generation that's Gen Z and whatever else is in the middle of me and my kid. Um, you know, I've always loved the way that you like are able to bring big picture stuff and level it down to the playing field of what your responsibilities within the role are. I've always really admired that about you. Now I've obviously I've talked to hundreds of builders at this point, worked with dozens of them as well, as you know. But one thing that I really find is a big separation between successful builders and the guys that are just struggling to put one or two jobs together is that ability to understand like where their role in that local ecosystem goes. So like as an example, like the 33,000 homes, like that to me, considering the fact that Tucson has about 1 million people, doesn't actually seem that large. But when you bring it up and you talk about it, you're like, that is a massive undertaking. How do you break that down and then look at that opportunity that's available to you? And how do you translate that to both your responsibility as the business and within the sales process to the customer and the value that you bring to them?
Yeah, I think that so the city and the county bring up these stats all the time, and they bring them up because they're concerned about how it's going to happen. As a builder, or maybe you sit there and say, hey, there's 10 major builders, the DR Hortons of the world and the Lennars of the world, and they're going
Mhm.
to get their piece. And if they could build 35,000 houses by themselves. It's not about the ability in terms of workers or materials or anything like that. It's space, it's land, right? And that is the issue, is not trying to force people all the way down to the border to build a house, or you have to drive all the way up to Phoenix to build a house, or somewhere in between. It's having access to space that is equitable for someone who works downtown, or for a student who's going to the University of Arizona, or whatever, right? And so
Yeah.
to me, the from a builder's perspective, I think that and especially an individual builder, right? Not like one of the major builders, but for someone like us, you're looking at that and saying, "Hey, our opportunity really is legitimately in backyards, in the space that's left over within the central part of the city." Well, the space that's left over is backyards, which I know it's not exactly the same as St. Augustine, but in the backyards of Tucson, it's dirt and a tumbleweed and like a bike. I mean, that's what's
Yeah,
back there, right?
that's like East
Um,
County, San Diego. I used to live there for 15 years. So yeah,
so
definitely moving here
there's a
was a
ton of
big thing. And I
yeah,
can say
there's
that.
there's a ton of unused space, and builders like us, if you can identify and explain to the public what is available, what is out there for them, right?
Mhm.
Whether that be rental income, people who people who could never have conceived the notion of being a landlord, or being a multi-property owner, or having a portfolio of rental units. That concept was for that's for the rich and famous. That's not
Yeah. Mhm.
the everyday. Every person almost out there has space in their backyard to do this and generate rental income. And you keep in mind, and when you do that, that rent goes up every year.
Yeah.
Your mortgage balance goes down every year, right? You've got a great situation. So even for those who, for people who a lot of people are doing this for their kids or for their parents, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing in each of those scenarios that is a absolute truth. They're not going to be there forever. The kids are eventually going to get out and do their own thing, and parents are not going to be with us for all time. And so sometimes people are like, well, I know I really need this right now, but what am I going to do after that? What are we going to do with it? It's a great rental opportunity, right? And when we build one of these, if you were to drive around probably any town in the US and you go and look at, just randomly pick 20 rental units, 20 2 bedroom, one baths, or 21 bedroom, one baths, and you walk in there, it's not great. The average, not great, not great.
Yeah.
You walk into one of these that we've just built, it's brand new, it's reasonably high-end finishes. It's a beautiful house, right? And
Yeah. I mean,
those properties generate way more revenue than what you might typically find. Because what people here's one thing I have seen with most renters, not all,
uh-huh.
I'm not generalizing the all of them, but
Yeah, this should be
most of
interesting. All right,
them
guys.
most of them don't do a ton to keep that property in pristine condition, right? I mean,
Yeah, because they don't own it. They
I've
don't.
seen
Yeah, I
them.
mean, it makes perfect
I
sense
don't
because
need
they
to
don't.
put any money into this. They're going to pay the
Mhm.
rent no matter what. I mean, there's a lot of that out there. And so to be able to provide an option that, gives someone makes someone feel good about where they live, it's a completely different situation.
I see. And I think that's kind of so that explanation actually kind of portrays exactly what I'm talking about is being able to draw the big picture down. You have an amazing ability to do that and to tie it to specific scenarios and specific situations that you have seen that allows you to provide not only motivation for making the decision, but the necessary information in order to make it a no-brainer, or at least like know what the options are and why you're making the recommendation at the expert that you're making. Um,
I mean, a lot of times I'm going to go and research what is the average rent that a particular type of property is bringing in an area and have that ready for a client. So when they are kind of, I don't know if I don't want to rent it right away. I need it for whatever the purpose is initially. But hey, if you really want to make them feel warm and fuzzy about the decision. If you really want to remove all fear, uncertainty, and doubt, be prepared to say, hey, look, here's the opportunity. And I didn't make these numbers up. Here's the data
yeah,
that
this is
that
actually
generated it, right? I mean, you're
so
going
it's
to get
actually
50.
this is so for the audience, like for those tiny home builders that are out there listening to this right now, like this is a skill set that you can take no matter where you go. It's taking the emotional decision that the customer has to make and then futurescaping it out into opportunity that is a real key fundamental driver of high ticket sales in general. Anything over four or five figures, that methodology can work with, but especially because you are taking one of the probably the second or third largest purchase that this person ever makes in their life, and then being able to expand on it and provide them opportunity with in the future. That's really what makes a difference. And part of why you're able to close the amount that you close consistently month in and month out. And then you tie in the quality of work. And for those of you guys also that are listening, if you guys want to see the quality of Brad's work, check out his Instagram page at Tiny Homes of Tucson or on IG. You can just search that. Beautiful properties, all brand new appliances, all very nice finishes and things like that. We personally worked on at least 3 or 4 of the builds that you've completed and created some really amazing assets out of that. At least that, probably more, but I lost track after a year.
Well, I tell you, I've got 2 properties next week. We're actually doing a final walkthrough this afternoon on one. We finished a walkthrough a week ago on the other, and we are bringing in a film crew, a photographer to come in and really do the right type of, not me with my phone, but someone who actually knows what they're doing, to go in there and film that, and use the drone and show them the spatial aspects of the house on the property, and you'll be getting some of that so that you can turn it into the magic that you do in our ad campaigns. But the there is there's the rental revenue concept, right? That you want to
Mm,
share with a client, but there's also I think back when I was in school, almost all of my friends had brothers and or sisters that were a year or 2 years older or younger. They were all
okay.
kind of
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were all kind of together, right? Went to the same high school, and we all were in the same elementary school over a period of time. And where that comes up to me is what has happened in the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, a typical family may have had a kid, or 2 kids, or 3 kids. One or both of those parents may have to be working from home now. They didn't do that 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and and potentially an aging parent has realized I probably shouldn't, I can't take care of this big house by myself, but I'm not ready to go into an assisted living facility or anything close to that. You start adding all those things up over the course of 5 years, and suddenly you don't need just one bedroom. You may need two additional bedrooms. But let's just narrow it down and say, hey, if I could just have an extra bedroom and bathroom, our lives would be much easier. They're
As
sitting on
somebody
a
that
two
has
point,
recently done that in the past 5 years,
yeah,
yes.
there's they're
We
sitting
didn't
on
even
a two
realize
point.
that we needed two bathrooms. We thought we only needed one, but now that we have two extra bathrooms, game changer.
It's a yeah, it's actual living versus what
Yeah.
you were doing before.
Hmm.
Um, but they're sitting on a 2.75% mortgage. They bought the house they're in for $300,000. Now they got to sell that $300,000 house and move into a four-bedroom, three bath. Well, back then that four-bedroom, three bath would have been 375, but today it's 475.
600. Yeah.
Yeah, or 500. And
Yeah.
that mortgage rate is not 2.75,
It's
it's
seven.
double. It's more than double, right? So to add one bedroom and one bathroom, if you were to upgrade your house, which people used to do all the time, hey, you know what? We need more space. We're going to sell our house and just get one a little bit bigger. That's always been the case. But in the last 5 years, for you to do that, you will more than double your mortgage payment to get one bedroom and one bathroom. Think about
It's
that, right?
insane, isn't it?
You're going from a $350,000 house to a $500,000 house. You're going from a 2.75% mortgage rate to a 6.5% or 7% mortgage rate. You're lucky if you only double the mortgage payment for
Yeah.
one bedroom and one bathroom. And you've lost that 2.75% mortgage forever.
Yeah. Hmm.
Option B is build an accessory dwelling unit on your property, keep the bulk of your investment at 2.75%, right? And the math just makes all the sense in the world. Not to mention the fact you got to sell your house, you got to pay a realtor, you got to pay all the closing fees on the new house, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. Gosh, I mean,
Yeah.
come on. This
Between
is
the
such
buyer's
a
agent, the seller's agent, and the closing fees, you're looking at almost 10%.
right. Everyone's going to get a piece of your problem,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
For sure.
So, to me, when you ask the question, what does the next 5 years look like? I just think that there are going to be more and more people that would say it doesn't pencil out to go buy a bigger house. And I really don't want to move away from my neighborhood and my neighbors and my kids' school district and my church or my friends or whatever. They don't want to do that if they don't have to. I'll
Yeah.
tell you
I mean,
another thing is that they may love their house. They can't find something that's going to replace that in a price range that they're looking for. I've had I've had more and more realtors who are now calling me to say I have a client, they want to buy a house with a guest house. But
oh, really?
that number of houses out there with guest houses is like
Very
none.
small. Yeah.
They're very small. And let's just say
Oh, that's interesting.
that there were six houses out there with a guest house, right? That realtor goes out, they pull the MLS, they find six houses. They aren't going to be in the same neighborhood. They're not going to be in the same area. They could be all over the city of Tucson. And there's a decent chance they're probably old, right? Back way old. I mean, like back in the 1900s when they were called carriage houses, right? That's what the guest house is. It's not
Yeah.
something new that
Yeah.
they've created in the last few years. And so ultimately they say, dude, just why don't you just go pick whatever house you want and we'll build the guest house for you. We'll get that done. And then that's when they call me. And a lot of times they call me in advance and they say, hey, I have a client. They want to buy a house. They want to be able to build an ADU on it. They need to talk to somebody who's going to let them know what are the legitimate properties, what are the rules, where can they build one of these, and that's kind of really more than anything else. Wayne, I would say my biggest goal is for the realtors, the loan originators, anybody involved with the real estate process considers Brad Jones and Tiny Homes of Tucson the person to call if you've got a client that has questions about building a guest house or an ADU on their property. If I do nothing other than that, I've done everything I need to do because just being that go-to person will generate it more than enough, builds for us over the course of the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh yeah, and I agree 100%. And that's I would say that that's a big difference between somebody like yourself who's doing, 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs a month, depending on the month, and somebody that's struggling to put together one. Is they're just relying on word of mouth or resellers or something like that. And what you're actually doing is building a brand and building a reputation in the local market. It's not just lead generation, it's not just referrals, it's an entire ecosystem. Um,
Yeah, I
my
talked
my
to a
my biggest Oh, go ahead, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. I talked to a
My
guy yesterday that had that's in Boston that has, I think he's just starting. Like he
Yeah.
literally started Google Ads Monday, right? He's had his website up for a month.
Mhm.
Um, and I think he's kind of in his mind doing what you're doing. I'm going to do some Google advertising. I'm going to, word of mouth. I'm going to, I know some people. And I said, he was asking me my opinion on kind of what I've been doing, how's it worked out, why have I had the success I've had, and I 100% said I feel like I'm a pretty good salesperson,
You are.
but what I'm
Just
not good at
just so
all,
that way we're clear. It's not a feeling, you
yeah,
are.
I think I am, but it doesn't help me at all if I don't have someone to sell to. It doesn't matter if I am the best there is if there's no one to sell to. And I am not good at finding people like that, right? Which is why the marketing piece is so critical. I mean, when we started this business, my wife was not on board until she saw what could be accomplished through the new marketing methods that are out there and the social media and the Google ads and all of that stuff. And when she saw the data that was coming in and could see that, my husband is going to get 10 to 12 appointments a week. I know he's going to close one of those 10 or 12. I mean, someone in there is going to say yes. And so that made sense. But I would never have been able to do that on my own. So yeah, the marketing piece is critical. And it's funny because in my 30 years of plus of selling, I, to me, marketing was in my way, right? They weren't in front of the customer. They don't do what I do. They don't know what I know. Blah 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 blah. I absolutely, and it's a different kind of marketing back then, right? But the marketing engine is the lifeblood of this company, without question. I no offense, I hope to get to a place where I don't need as much marketing because I am just such a well-known name.
I would love that too. And like, here's the funny thing, right? Uh, Out of the 16 years that I've been in sales and marketing, um, I would say that most agencies and the way that they approach it, while it's not wrong, it just doesn't teach them enough. It doesn't teach the clients and the people actually talking to the leads that the marketing are coming from enough fast enough in order to achieve the desired result. And what I mean by that is, um, there's a lot of people out there that they'll spend 10K on a coach. They'll spend 3K on a website. They'll spend $5,500 on a custom CRM system. And then they won't have enough traffic to actually drive that stuff in it. They won't have enough money to drive enough traffic through the system that they built in order to like actually get the feedback going. And part of the reason that you felt the way that you felt before was because the marketing wasn't asking the sales guys for the feedback, and the sales guys weren't necessarily doing what they needed to do on the back end and taking notes to give the marketing guys that data. All right. So in my mind, it's always been like, historically at least, sales versus marketing. And in order to have not just beginning success, but sustainable success, you got to spend more money on the traffic than you do on the system, and then utilize a feedback loop consistently and without like worrying that you're going to piss somebody off. Because I couldn't do the stuff that I do unless you came in once a week and said, "Hey, we got these out of area leads," or "We got a bunch of leads that said this," or "We got like a rash of people that they want this and this and this," which you do consistently. And thankfully, because of the experience level that I have and because of all the different niches that I've worked in over the years, I know how to take that feedback effectively and then turn it into the marketing that you see. But every single time I see somebody worried about getting their content right or getting their organic right or getting their messaging right, when in all actuality, you could just throw in the thing that you're selling into ChatGPT, ask it to create some avatars and ask it to like create some rough draft stuff and then push that out to your audience utilizing ads. And
Yep.
if you utilize ads, then the feedback is immediate and then you can start iterating from there. If you notice, Brad, what we did with you is we started with meta ads and we started with the thing that was getting you the most leads and the most volume at that time. And then we
Mhm.
asked for feedback, a lot of feedback over the first 90 days,
Yep.
especially over the first 90 days. And then once we got that down, then we expanded the budget on that one platform so that that way it would get more. And then once you were settled there and you started to get a return, that's when we expanded to Google. That's when we started doing SEO. That's when we started to worry about content and all that slow trickle stuff so that that way the ecosystem itself is always hitting people. Um, I didn't talk about this a lot with you in particular because you just kind of got it. But so many people don't obey the 7-11-4 rule. And what that is that your clients, they need to see an average, and get this, an average of 7 hours of content from you before they trust you. They need to see it across 11 different touch points,
Right.
and they need to see it in 4 different locations. Right. And to
Yeah.
your point, like you were saying earlier about like, making these people feel like you're going to have the answers during that process. You said that during the beginning of this call. And if we can set the marketing system up so that that way they see your face, they know your brand, and they know you already have the answers before you ever even get to them, then that's what's going to build that know, like, and trust factor. And we obey that 7-11-4 rule in every single account that we manage. But when we combine it with somebody that knows the process, has the industry knowledge, and takes the time to care, that's where the magic happens. And it's a holistic thing.
It's funny
So
when you first started doing the ads for us back in literally a year ago,
yeah, it was
um,
yearly.
you would there was I never saw any ads of any kind from any builders doing tiny homes or guest house ADUs, right? But I can tell you this, they
Magic was
saw
life.
mine. They
Oh
all
yeah.
saw mine, right? And then I started seeing the little drip here and there, but the quality is nowhere close, right? I mean, it's not close. Um, I applaud the fact that they're making an effort. I think it's the old DIY version, which I'm not. They will over time learn how to get it done better, but I really doubt that they're going to do it as well as it can be done by an actual third party company that just does this. I was talking to that guy from Boston and I said, figure out what it is that you do really, really well and just do that.
Just do that. Yeah, exactly.
And then you have other people I mean, you can go to Fiverr or any of these companies and have them create a logo for you or create a brand or a name or whatever it is that you want. You don't need to try to figure out how to do everything perfectly. That's not your skill set. That guy and on the other side of the planet can knock it out in about 7 minutes and it's going to cost you $42. Do that,
Yep.
right? And then as it relates to marketing, I mean, you know how long it would take? Well, you do know how long it would take for me to come up with any of the content that you have done and make it look the way you do. And then even if I could do that, I don't know all the different levers that you got to pull in terms of how the meta side works. And it's just, I mean, I can't even imagine thinking that I could take that on, and then actually trying to. There would be no time for it to me to make a single
It
call. I just
actually,
assume I'll pay someone to do that because that's what's going to give me the leads that I need, that the opportunities that I need so that I can go out and meet with customers who have legitimate problems that I can solve. I mean, it is so it happened so quickly. I don't know. We just this week, right? I was pushing some buttons and making you do stuff you didn't want to do, and Facebook got all bent out of shape and said that doesn't work for me, and our leads started dropping off. And then when you just said, "Hey, let me just do this the way it needs to be done, so the algorithm's maximized," you flip the switch, and literally the next morning by 10 a.m., I had 6 leads and 2 booked appointments. I mean that happened in the course of hours. And those are the kinds of things where I'd be just sitting there scratching my head trying to figure that out for days and weeks on end. You just let people who know how to do their stuff do their stuff. You do what you do really well and move on.
That was actually a huge mindset shift for me personally over the past year. Because when you guys all came to me and I had all those dozen people, it was just me and Ashley. And
Yeah.
I had one VA, right? And we were like, man, like we're grateful that this is happening and we're grateful that like we have this opportunity, but what do we do with all of this and how do we like manage all of it all at one time? And I eventually got to a point where we were working 16, 17 hours a day and I was like, I can't do everything that I want to do by myself. And I had to completely shift my mindset into more of like, you know what? I need to just hand the ball to the people that have the time and have the same expertise that I do, and then fill in. Like my responsibility is to get the ball in the hands of the person that it needs to be in, and then when they showcase that they're not as good at me at a particular thing, train them up on that particular aspect. But that's real leverage in a business, and I didn't understand that before you guys came along. So thank you for that. What's a big mindset shift that you would want to share with another builder that might be listening to this? Like maybe they're
Uh,
stuck or they're unsure about how to grow. Like, what's one thing that you would say to them if you could?
yeah, it's something that's just come up literally in probably the last 30 days, right? Which was um, when it comes to customer interaction, client interaction, nobody does that but me, right? It's my company, it's my name, it's my face, it's my reputation. I will do the communication with the customer, which if you get any type of traction, you can't make every phone call and you can't write every email. You cannot handle that, right? It can't you're going to be doing the 16-hour days and you're going to burn out. But I just
Yeah,
didn't have the confidence and faith, probably a little high on my own ego that someone's going to handle it the way I would handle it or the way I want them to handle it or what have you. And so I did bring on this guy temporarily as a contractor to just help with the pre-construction portion of the business. Back in April, I brought him on board, and I think I mentioned on September 1, I officially made him a full-time
yep,
W-2 employee.
yep,
And I've kind of just like let go of the reins. And that guy sends out, I mean, he was sending out communications last night at 6:30. He's already sending them out this morning at 6:30. And I couldn't have done it any better. Now, between you, me, and the fence post, I'm sure ChatGPT had something to do with that communication. I don't care. I would have done the same thing, man. So
yeah,
it is allowing people to. It's letting go, is what it is. My mind shift was even the stuff you think that you do really well, you're not the only one that can do it really well, right? There are a lot of
yeah,
there and there's a lot of technology out there that will allow other people to do what you want them to do as efficiently as you can do it and let go of the reins and let them do that, right? I think even my wife was saying, why don't you just let him go on some of the calls? I'm like, whoa, 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 let's not get ahead of ourselves. But you know what? I'm right now, I would let him go on a call. Totally. If I got double booked somehow, I'd say, you go to that one, I'll go to this one, we'll connect up later. And you do need to be able to trust in your team and your people, and you also have to develop them, right? So that they can do that. You can't expect to be doing it all by yourself all the time. And that's really one of the biggest things is recognizing and in the beginning, the first couple of months when there's no revenue coming in at all, it's really easy to do everything yourself, right? Because you don't have
yeah.
any money to pay anyone else to do it.
All
But
right,
when
and that
you
whole back up against the wall thing is a very powerful motivator for sure.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. But once you start getting some of that the revenue is coming in, you've got some wins, you do have to have the confidence and to a degree the courage to say, I'm going to give this to somebody else. If I really want this thing to keep going the direction it's going, if I want to see the hockey stick results, i gotta I gotta reinvest and I gotta let some of this stuff go and develop and help people and encourage them and give them the confidence they need. That is part of leadership. That's why people start their own business, right? They want to have
Yeah,
that degree of management and control, and they feel like they can help people in their own careers. And so, That was the biggest one for me. And keep in mind, I've spent 30 years in a very large corporate environment, so I I have managed people, I have developed, I've hired, and all of that type of thing. For some reason, when you start your own deal, and
It's
this is
different,
all,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because
just
I managed a couple people and like hired a few people before I started my own thing too. And like for some reason it just didn't seem to matter as much when I was somebody else's money, I guess. I don't know. Well,
money,
actually,
name, reputation. Those are all, that's those are big drivers, big levers. But that has
yeah.
definitely been is being able to let people do what they can do, develop them, encourage them, help them, but give yourself a break.
Well,
You're still going to do 12, 13 hour days, but that's better, believe me, that's better than 15 and 16 hour days.
yeah, exactly. And like the thing about it too is like one of my mentors, his name was Travis Sago, and he has this whole thing. It's an acronym called TIMER. It's time, identity, money, energy, and reputation. Those are all currencies that we trade that have nothing to do with the value of our service, right?
Hmm.
And if we can find a way to either trade our time for less money or trade that role for a higher identity or something like that within that framework, then that's what achieves that hockey stick growth. And it's not necessarily about the product or the service that you sell per se, but how you navigate moving through all of those different currencies while still coming out as an expert that's not like trying to like scam people or ruin your reputation or anything like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
You brought up wins, and I got two more questions for you before we run out of time. Number one, take two. What's the number one win that you're proud of over the past 12 months?
Number one, I mean, I got to be honest, as me first, right? I mean, you're sitting there and you don't know what this is going to be. And let me put this in context.
Okay.
I've never built anything. I know nothing about the construction business, right? Not that I am going to be building anything. That's what someone else does, right?
Yeah.
But I don't have this list of wins. I don't have this list of customers you can call and ask them to, how was the experience? I have none of that. I just have me saying, I'm going to take care of you and kind of hoping that's going to be enough. And it
Mhm.
was, right? It was enough. And that was our first house. It was a really nice house. It was an ADA compliant house for a young man in a wheelchair. The client was thrilled. We stayed on budget. We stayed on time. I mean, it was
Is that the one where
that.
you had the walkway where we put like you had the guy put Tiny Homes of Tucson on the walkway?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's a nice place. I would live
yeah.
in
And I
that
mean,
shit.
so I just, to me, it was, that, like, she said yes, right? She said she wanted us to build this. And um, you know, I have to say that was the biggest one because for me to even assume that someone was going to do that, that was going to invest, that was an expensive house, right? You're going to invest that kind of money. She had a lot of upgrades. You had to do all the ADA compliant stuff and the automatic door opener and all of that. Um, but to know that she felt confident enough to not a lot of tiny homes of Tucson. That wasn't a tiny homes of Tucson thing. She said, Brad, I will let you build this house for me. Because there was no tiny homes Tucson. That had been out there for a minute. Um, and so I think that was the biggest, for sure. That's the biggest win to date. I have some things that we're working on right now. I had a guy who had a contract to have us build two of these in his backyard. That was a big deal, right? A big
Yeah, yeah.
revenue
Double.
deal, but
Hmm.
you're knocking out two houses. That was also a key win. And he was a referral from an investment or a property manager who bought one, had us build one contract, and then he brought in a client who had us build two more. Um, th- those are those are great moments, right? Where you really feel
It's
like,
so
hey, I'm
funny.
making a difference.
It's so funny how the beginning ones are always the more impactful ones for us, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. All right. I like, for example, we've scaled way past this, but I still remember the first $10,000 day, first $10,000 day I had way back in 2016. Like I had
Mhm.
never even dreamed that was possible. And we've
Right.
made way more money since then. We've grown way past that. And still that's one of the more successful moments that I remember feeling in my life. And that happened 7, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
9 years
You
ago.
know, I will tell you that I've done this more than once. I have asked ChatGPT what percent of new construction companies contract 30 builds in their first year, or what percent generate X revenue in the United States. And I'll try to continue to narrow it down, so it can be very, very specific because I'm I remember when we started doing this and I was talking to my wife and I said, if we do this, if we can do this, it will be the best decision we've ever made, that we could ever make. And we're past that and it's not even October yet. We're not
Yeah.
even nine
And you
months
guys
into
still
the
got a
year.
quarter. You guys still have a whole
Yeah.
quarter.
So
So
it's just best year of my career. Best last 12 months is the best 12 months from a professional perspective that I've ever had, and it's not even close.
that's wow. I would All right,
Well,
that's actually a great that is a great segue to my last question for you. And then we'll cut this up so that way we can use it as content. We'll put it on your YouTube channel, all that stuff. Okay. So if we fast forward another 12 months, what's the big vision or goal that you're building towards now?
I heard a one of our concrete partner who does our foundation pours was saying to me a couple weeks ago that we're like becoming a legitimate client for him. Like we're not just you know yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
a
it's
job here,
someone's
a job there.
like
Yeah.
yeah. And he's like, I mean, you're kind of getting into like legitimate builder status. And I said,
That's
well,
what's
what
up,
what
dude.
what's
That's awesome.
what's legitimate builder status? He's like, what is a solid, production builder? What's the least amount that you would still qualify as a solid production builder for you? And I
Hmm.
don't remember the name of the company, but it was 80 builds. And I was like, 80? I can do that. I can get to 80, right?
That's what's up,
Um,
dude.
so for me, that's definitely one of them. Is I kind of have I just put this thing in my mind. Well, I didn't. He did. I want to get to 80. It's such a ridiculous number. It's not 100. It's 80. But that's the number. Um,
Okay.
but the other piece is we have started this nonprofit arm of the company, which is Tiny Villages of Tucson, which is utilizing and leveraging a community land trust model to access, buy, be donated properties that sit in a land trust that allows people to buy houses and sell houses on that property. They pay a land lease of $150 a month or what have you. And then they can literally buy a house and we'll build it or we'll build them and then they buy it, either way, for 50 to 60 cents on the dollar as to what they would pay if they were to go and try to buy one somewhere else. So just doing the math on it, it comes down to this 25% more Tucsonans will be eligible to buy a house than they do today through this program. To me,
Wow.
that's not a tick. That is a major needle mover. If you can give
Yeah.
25% of the population that can't buy a house, absolutely can't afford to buy a house today, the ability to buy one. So if we could ramp that up and I could have two or three of those projects actually come to fruition a year, that would be huge for me. And I I would be totally fine if 10 other builders did the same thing. I mean, I'm not in competition when it comes to that. I want as many people to be able to buy a home as they can. And so those are kind of my two 80 and to be able to get the community land trust model up and running with Tiny Villages of Tucson.
Well, that's an awesome goal, number one. And number two, I could see how both of those things could be synonymous and happen at the same time. Um, like you're giving back to the community, you're showcasing that like you care about the people in that community and you're helping them solve a big problem, and you're looking forward to becoming a keystone to helping solve that problem. And if you're solving it for literally a quarter of the market over the next year, that's how we escape the levels of inflation that we've been seeing since 2020, since March 2020, let's put it that way. So that way we don't get banned on the content scale for talking about it. All right. But Brad, it's been a pleasure, man. So for those of you guys that are listening out there, if you guys want to check out what Brad's doing, go to tinyhomesofttucson.com or check out Tiny Homes of Tucson on Instagram. Is there any place else or anything that you would like to plug, add, or include inside of this before we close out of this, Brad?
And there's also a YouTube channel. I've got a bunch of videos and content up there. Hopefully you'll see some things in there that will maybe answer some questions you might have, whether you're a builder or a client. Also, Tiny Homes of Tucson. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me this morning. You're a gentleman and a scholar, and we will chat soon.
Right back at you, Brad. Winners keep winning, and you are definitely one of them.